Super fun week with a lot to talk about. We will cover the injuries later on in this video. Starting off with an offense that's not too exciting. You have Carolina going out there and giving you an acceptable week from Adam Thielen, right? Adam Thielen does have the 7 receptions, 76 receiving yards. Now, what's interesting is Terrace Marshall actually leads this team in targets. DJ Chark fades to the back with obviously no Jonathan Mingo in this game. Now, one thing that's really worth pointing out is the running back usage that we had in this backfield. You had Chuba Hubbard leading the team in rushing. Chuba Hubbard actually seeing more carries. Chuba Hubbard playing more snaps as well than Miles Sanders in this backfield. Now, keep in mind, you did have Miles Sanders dealing with the groin injury going into this game. Going forward, I don't necessarily expect that Chuba Hubbard is the lead back, but y'all know we did not include Miles Sanders in our top 50 flex rankings this week. This was one of those reasons. I mean, right now he's a committee running back in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. So I think you view Miles Sanders as like a mid running back 3. In the case of Adam Thielen, he can be a mid wide receiver 3 for you, maybe even a high-end wide receiver 3. I will have a hard time putting him up as a top 20 wide receiver. Nothing against him, just more so this offense. And if you try to rank wide receivers, you will see how many talented options that there are. Now, somebody that I was expecting better things from this week, Jordan Addison. I mean, you only see 28 snaps played. Jordan Addison gives you the big old goose egg. Still has a very high ceiling later on in this season. Will be interesting to see how this usage goes forward. Now, I want to look at the running backs in Minnesota. We already know that Justin Jefferson obviously is stud. I mean, you did have TJ Hawkinson with a step down, but come on, he's a tight end. He's still, his 2 receptions, 24 receiving yards will be a lot better than some of the other tight ends I started this week. But if you were looking at this backfield, you actually had Alexander Mattison seeing a season low 66% snap rate. And this was with Cam Akers coming into this offense. Akers played 14 snaps in comparison to Alexander Mattison at 33. So Alexander Mattison, the clear lead back in this backfield. However, if Cam Akers will be in this committee going forward, I still think that makes Alexander Mattison a low-end RB2. It's very hard to see Mattison, who's been inefficient up until this point, continuously going out there and providing you startable fantasy weeks at your running back 1, running back 2 slot. If Cam Akers expands his role to see 35% of this backfield, regardless, if you need to start him, obviously can. Just don't view him as a league winner by any means. Now, going over to the Denver side, we are going to have a couple different things to talk about. One, let's look at the overall usage with these receivers. You have Jerry Jeudy only running 24 routes in comparison to Courtland Sutton at 29. A little bit frustrating. Now, you do have Marvin Mims actually expanding his role in this offense. Now, Marvin Mims, someone that we, of course, weren't starting this week just because he's playing so few snaps. He runs 12 routes in this Denver offense, which is actually a little bit more from a percentage basis than what we saw in previous weeks. But ultimately, it looks like none of these Denver Broncos wide receivers are going to be startable in fantasy. I thought Jerry Jeudy would be better coming back from this hamstring strain, but clearly this is not a good offense. And with Jerry Jeudy not even running 100% or even 90% of the routes. Now, going over to the running backs, Javonte Williams gets injured. So we'll talk about Jaleel McConklin. I hopefully did not butcher that in the waiver wire video that comes out tomorrow morning. So just please make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you have not done so already. Really hard to take away too much from this running back usage trend. We will be talking about this a little more in depth in that waiver wire video tomorrow. Now, going over to our next team in the same game, you're going to have the Chicago Bears. And the main thing I want to be focusing in on is not necessarily that Justin Fields is back. Justin Fields is great. It's more so I want to point out how bad this Denver Broncos defense is. It's why we were saying that, yeah, you can start Justin Fields if you wanted to. Add him as a low-end QB1, even though he'd been horrible, because this Denver Broncos offense so far has been okay, but their defense has been the worst in the NFL. The Denver Broncos have allowed 150 points this season. The other teams inside the top 5, you have Chicago at 137, you have Washington at 120, you have Miami at 119, and you have the Los Angeles Chargers at 104. So yeah, the Denver Broncos defense looks like one that we want to be attacking every single week. Now, sadly, Roschon Johnson doesn't have a super large role here. This role belongs to Khalil Herbert at this moment. And if you are going to be projecting this Chicago Bears team going forward, I know everybody's going to rush to go, oh, Cole Kmet's a great tight end. We'll talk about Kmet in the waiver wire video tomorrow. DJ Moore, yes, crushed. Justin Fields, yes, crushed. And I think you'd be very excited if you started them this week. Going forward against tougher matchups, I will still say Fields is that low-end QB1, primarily just based off his rushing upside. And DJ Moore still is that low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3, because I don't think that all of a sudden the Chicago passing offense is finally figured out and Justin Fields is some great quarterback. Now, going over to the London game, Jacksonville is a team that it's too hard to know exactly what we're doing with these receivers. Calvin Ridley's target share has gone down every single week this season. Week 1, 34%. Week 2, 19%. Week 3, 17%. Week 4, looked like he was going to crush. He had the early receiving touchdown. Then kind of fizzles out. Only has a 6.5% team target share this week. You have Christian Kirk going out there and dominating targets back to back. And what we are going to be looking at in my mind is the ultimate sell high opportunity on Christian Kirk. I understand he has been the wide receiver 1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars over the past 3 weeks. Maybe you think this Kirk usage remains, but I'm expecting when you do get Zay Jones back in this offense, at least from what we saw in week 1, what we saw in the preseason, when you have all 3 wide receivers healthy, typically we're seeing Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones be the wide receivers in 2 wide receiver sets. Christian Kirk regulated to just slot duties. So Kirk crushes. I don't know how reliable this is going forward. And then the running backs here, you have Travis Etienne. Etienne looks great, of course. I mean, he doesn't really give you a fantastic fantasy performance, yada, yada, yada. I mean, I hope that the points will come. I know all of us pretty much have Travis Etienne on our team at this point. But ultimately, I mean, Travis Etienne plays 56 out of 66 snaps. Looks like a true workhorse back. I mean, the man runs 24 routes out of this backfield compared to Tank Bigsby at 1. So he's seeing pretty much every single snap on third down. He has 20 carries. I mean, he has 3 receptions, 17 receiving yards. I think it will get better going forward. Now, going over to the Atlanta side of things. Oh my gosh. This is sad to say out loud, but Kyle Pitts may be droppable. You go ahead and look at this. Over the last 3 weeks, Jonnu Smith, 33 fantasy points. Kyle Pitts, 16. There's not really any passing volume whatsoever in this offense in the first place, let alone the fact that Jonnu Smith is now taking away from Kyle Pitts. If Pitts wasn't viable with no Jonnu Smith here, then there's no way in hell we can start Kyle Pitts with him. And if you are looking at what we've had with the receiving usage, Drake London does get you the receiving touchdown. He does lead the team with 7 targets. But outside of the receiving touchdown, he came this close to having another one at the very end of the game. Really, I don't think we can rely on him either. I think the only player you can rely upon is going to be Bijan Robinson, who has the rushing volume, who has the receiving volume, who looks great every single time he touches the ball. Because Desmond Ridder, arguably, at this moment, is the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. Now, going over to Buffalo with the Buffalo Bills, the main thing I want to point out, not that Stephon Diggs is great. We all know Stephon Diggs is great. It's going over to the running back usage. Now, James Cook, previous to this, had been playing like 70% of the snaps, and you would love the role from James Cook. The only issue that you possibly had with it is he wasn't really getting involved in the red zone at all. Well, James Cook actually sees both touches at the goal line this week, which is great, but the overall snaps go down. James Cook plays 23 snaps out of 58. You have Damian Harris, you have Latavius Murray seeing 16 and 19 snaps as well. So this looks like it's maybe turning into a 3-man running back by committee. Now, James Cook does get the rushing touchdown, which does save his fantasy day. He does have a long reception as well for 48 receiving yards, but he did only have 1 target out of this backfield. So it's hard to come out here and say that James Cook is a must-start running back all of a sudden. Now, going over to our next running back, Devon Achane is a running back that is a must-start player at this point. We told a ton of people to start him this week, and I was very upfront saying, you know what? I have no idea what's going to happen. The floor is about the lowest floor you can imagine. I don't know what the usage is going to look like, but I can't tell someone to bench a running back that dropped 50 points in his first NFL game. Like, we had to go through, we had to start him. He does expand his role. Raheem Mostert is a running back that actually slides back. Mostert sees 28 snaps compared to Achane at 39. You're going over and looking at the production. Devon Achane only had 8 carries, but 101 rushing yards and multiple rushing touchdowns. It's a running back that was a great receiver in college as well. He did see 5 targets out of this backfield for 3 receptions and 19 receiving yards. The one thing that maybe you have to be a little bit hesitant about is there is the outside chance that Jeff Wilson Jr. comes into this backfield and turns it into a three-man running back by committee. That's partly the reason why we had Raheem Mostert as a sell-high player last week. Now, going over to our next team, Baltimore, if we're going to look at the running backs just 1 second, I mean, they split this 3 ways. You have a little bit of Gus Edwards, you have a little bit of Justice Hill, you have a little bit of Melvin Gordon. Nobody is startable. I mean, if Gus Edwards was some great receiving back, then maybe we could look at him, but nope. And I also want to point out, do not give up on Lamar Jackson. Do not give up on Mark Andrews. There's not a single player I invested more money into in fantasy football drafts on Underdog this year than Lamar Jackson. He goes out there, has 2 passing touchdowns, has 2 rushing touchdowns as well. Mark Andrews, multiple receiving touchdowns out there crushing it. I mean, our Lamar Jackson team's on Underdog looking great right now. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, if y'all want to go get into a draft with us on Underdog, they just dropped a new tournament that will be drafting on the live stream over the next few weeks. Plus, you can check out all these pick'ems over on Underdog Fantasy. And when you sign up to Underdog with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $500. Plus, you're going to be getting our updated rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. And you'll be getting a Geno Smith special pick'em more than less than half a total yard against the New York Giants on Monday night. So please make sure you take advantage of that. You can find that link in the description and the comment section. Now, going over to the Cleveland side of things, we had Jerome Ford as a sell-high running back coming into this week. And I want to say, yeah, Jerome Ford did bad, but I think I was maybe wrong here, to be honest. Because Jerome Ford does see the majority of the work. Jerome Ford plays 43 snaps in comparison to Kareem Hunt only at 15. Now, is kind of a 3-man running back by committee, where the thing that I was not expecting is Pierre Strong to actually get some work here. Pierre Strong leads the team in rushing with 5 carries for 49 rushing yards. Don't really care about that too much. Obviously, the efficiency is going to be wildly varied on a week-to-week perspective, but I thought Kareem Hunt was going to have a slightly larger role. I really wish that Kareem Hunt was a little bit better for those Underdog basketball teams like we were mentioning, but ultimately, I mean, there's not too much that we can be taken away. Right now, Ford looks like he's in a 3-man running back by committee. When you have no Deshaun Watson, obviously this offense is complete garbage. The receivers, don't waste your time going through and looking at Amari Cooper. Watson will be back after the bye. Watson and Amari will be just fine. It was just the horrendous quarterback play that we had where we had a whopping 121 passing yards and 3 interceptions in this offense. None of the receivers are worth looking at. Now, what's very interesting to see is what happened in Houston. I've been waiting for CJ Stroud to take a step back. I mean, the man has been one of the most productive quarterbacks in the NFL so far this season. He's going, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, he's going out there throwing the ball 50 times a game. What happens if he throws it only 30 times? Well, we figured out what happens. He has 300 passing yards, multiple passing touchdowns, and Nico Collins still goes out there and absolutely crushes it. Nico Collins does look like the solidified wide receiver 1 in this offense. We got psyched out thinking maybe it was Tank Dell based off the past 2 weeks. But no, if you take a step back, I mean, you've had Nico Collins now for 3 out of 4 weeks this season, just dominating with targets, dominating with volume. He's one of the top 5 wide receivers right now in receiving yards this season. I mean, no hesitation at all calling Nico Collins a must-start top 24 wide receiver rest of season. Someone I was way too low on. I did not expect the Houston Texans offense to be this good, and I think you'd be super excited if you are a Texans fan. Now, going over to Pittsburgh, we did have a couple injuries here. You have Pat Freiermuth going down. You have Kenny Pickett going down as well. Now, this is a team that has a bye week coming up soon, so maybe you have some hope there. Ultimately, nobody is going to be startable. You see Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren splitting the backfield right down the middle with 29 snaps each. You have Najee Harris with more carries. You have Jaylen Warren with more usage as a receiver. So you can't really start the running backs. I don't think you can start George Pickens either if Mitchell Trubisky is going to be his quarterback going forward. No Pat Freiermuth means obviously you can't start Pat Freiermuth. So for the time being, the entire Pittsburgh Steelers offense has a massive red X over it. Do not start a single player, similar to someone that we're going to be talking about later on. Now, going over to the Rams. So far, I think my fantasy football career, I've had some pretty big misses. There could not have been a bigger miss this season than me saying that Puka Nacua was someone that I didn't believe in the upside case coming into the year. Thought that this was fifth round rookie wide receiver. I mean, just people projecting him to step into a Cooper Kupp role before we saw anything was a little bit crazy. Puka Nacua right now is second in the NFL in receiving, only behind Justin Jefferson, directly ahead of Tyreek Hill and Keenan Allen. He had 10 targets in this game, one behind Higbee, but still 10 targets, 9 receptions, 163 receiving yards, and the receiving touchdown. I've been saying up until this point, wide receiver one when you have no Cooper Kupp. When Cooper Kupp gets back, I don't believe that he is going to be like some must-start wide receiver going forward. However, based off what we have seen, it's so hard to imagine that he's not like a better version of Robert Woods, right? So I still think that you have most likely Cooper Kupp, the wide receiver one in Los Angeles from week 5 onwards. But I do not think that Puka Nacua is all of a sudden going to be regulated down to being a low-end wide receiver 2 rest of season. I thought that's what was going to happen when Cooper Kupp was back. Frankly, I was laughably wrong. Probably my biggest whiff ever. And I think instead, Puka's probably going to be a high-end wide receiver 2, and he's going to be a better version of Robert Woods from 3-ish years ago in this Rams offense. Maybe 4 years ago. Hard to get the timeline correct. Now, Kyren Williams continues to score touchdowns at a crazy clip. Kyren Williams remains one of the true bell cow running backs in the NFL right now. Kyren Williams, obviously a running back that we're starting every single week, regardless of matchup. Now, Stafford did suffer an injury in this game. It will be something to monitor going forward. We should have way more information about this next week. Now, going over to Indianapolis, Anthony Richardson, if you just look at the box score, not good, right? I mean, 11 completions off of 25 passing attempts. However, if you dive under the hood, I mean, if you look at what actually happened in this game and watch Anthony Richardson, the man looked so damn good. He put on a clinic showing you the rushing upside. 10 carries for 56 rushing yards and the rushing touchdown as well. Anthony Richardson must start QB1 rest of season, especially in those 4-point passing touchdown leagues where quarterback rushing upside is going to matter a little bit more. Zach Moss continues to see everything in this backfield. He has 53 snaps in comparison to Trey Sermon at 10. Now, with Zach Moss, it's unlike the Puka situation, right? Where with Puka, we can say, okay, Cooper Kupp comes back and Puka's still probably startable. You just have to lower your expectations with them. With Zach Moss, it's very much up in the air. You have 2 different possibilities. One, Jonathan Taylor comes back and plays for the Indianapolis Colts. And in that instance, Zach Moss is someone that can never come close to your starting lineup. However, there's also the instance that maybe Jonathan Taylor does not come back, is traded, regardless of what happens, does not play for the Indianapolis Colts. And in that instance, Zach Moss looks like a low-end RB1 rest of season. So it's very hard to know exactly where we should rank the guy. Obviously, very high ceiling, very low floor based off what's going to happen with JT. Now, going over to New Orleans, Alvin Kamara. I didn't think this was true whenever I first saw it. 13 receptions. Now, with those 13 receptions, did Alvin Kamara give you some great game? No, he did not. He gave you 33 receiving yards, okay? He gave you 51 rushing yards. Now, I did see pretty much everything in this offense. With that being said, I mean, I am slowly beginning to think that PPR is not the best way to play fantasy football. Like for years and years, I thought PPR was the way to go. You want to go super flex, full PPR, include some type of tight end premium. I don't know if I'm just turning into an old man. I don't know if I'm becoming a grumpy old fart, but I mean, if you're looking at this, Alvin Kamara getting there with a great fantasy day, even though it's a just horrendous situation overall. I don't know. I don't know if I'm a believer in PPR anymore. I think half PPR is probably the way to go about it. But nonetheless, I think a lot of people that are going to be panicking about Chris Olave are just going to be doing so for no reason. He's going to be fine. It's not like Alvin Kamara coming in, taking 14 targets means Olave is not going to be productive going forward. Derek Carr, just clearly not healthy. They should have never played Derek Carr. They should have let Jameis Winston go out there and sling it. Now, going over to the Bucs side of things, Mike Evans goes down with a hamstring, which is very frustrating to see. And this may end up, depending on the timeline of this injury, put in jeopardy the 1,000 receiving yard streak per season that Mike Evans is currently holding. Hopefully we get more information about this injury very, very soon. On the side of the running backs, you have Rachaad White still seeing pretty much everything in this backfield. And Rachaad White is looking good while he does it too. Baker Mayfield looks pretty good here. I mean, Chris Godwin has himself a day. I think maybe we're going to look into this a little bit more. But Cade Otton is someone that we'll be talking about in the waiver wire video tomorrow. So just hit that subscribe button. Now, going over to Philadelphia, I don't know if we want to talk about too much here. Devonta Smith is really good. A.J. Brown is really good. Jalen Hurts is really good. DeAndre Swift seeing everything in the backfield. You don't really have much from Kenneth Gainwell. Do we need to talk about that much? I mean, y'all know A.J. Brown was a screaming buy low guy for us in week 3. The reason being is coming off 2 poor weeks in weeks 1 and 2. People are panicking going, okay, well, when you have 2 elite level wide receivers in an offense, you have natural volatility. Some weeks you'll have an A.J. Brown blow up. Other weeks you have a Devonta Smith blow up, and it will kind of go back and forth. So don't be panicking at all about these. I mean, Devonta Smith, now that he's not the guy scoring a touchdown, next week he'll be the guy that blows up. And with Dallas Goedert tied in that, I wish I did not draft as much. I mean, Dallas Goedert giving you nothing. At this point, Dallas Goedert's probably outside the top 10 tight ends. Now, going over to Washington, impressive performance where they were actually able to stay in the game, right? Sam Howell looked a lot better than he did last week against Buffalo. Terry McLaurin actually gives you double-digit targets. John Dotson does get 9 targets in the receiving touchdown as well. Going forward, I don't know if we can be super excited about any of these guys in reality. I mean, maybe Terry McLaurin we can say is a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. I do want to reiterate, remember, this is Terry McLaurin's age 28 season, and he's never been a top 20 wide receiver from a points per game perspective. So it's not like Terry McLaurin has some massive ceiling. It is nice to see a little bit of a bright spot for Sam Howell. And then also, you did have Brian Robinson leading this backfield in carries, leading this backfield in receiving yet again, or at least targets out of this backfield and receptions. Now, going over to Tennessee, probably the saddest game of the week. I'll be making an in-depth video about the Cincinnati Bengals team tomorrow. Tennessee blows out the Bengals, right? Not even remotely close. Derrick Henry has himself a freaking day. Everybody panicking about Derrick Henry in the usage last week, including myself. He does split the backfield with Tyjae Spears, 39 snaps compared to Tyjae Spears at 35. In reality, does it matter? No. Derrick Henry, 22 carries, 122 rushing yards, and the rushing touchdown. Derrick Henry adds on a classic passing touchdown. Derrick Henry has a reception out of the backfield. I think this is kind of what we've come to expect with Derrick Henry. If the Tennessee Titans are able to win the game, Derrick Henry is going to be a phenomenal option. If the Titans fall behind, if they get boat raced, then Derrick Henry is going to be very bad. This was one of those games that the Titans were able to dominate. Now, what is interesting is you consistently see DeAndre Hopkins getting used less and less, obviously dealing with this ankle injury. Only 35 snaps this week. He did lead the team in receiving with 63 receiving yards. You had no Treylon Burks in this offense. I mean, I don't know. I think that DeAndre Hopkins may be someone that you're looking to panic sell at this point. Speaking of panic selling, in Cincinnati, Burrow is horrendous. Burrow is not healthy. There's no way in hell you can start Joe Burrow anytime soon. We still have to continue playing Joe Mixon. He's getting everything in this backfield. 42 snaps in comparison to Travion Williams at 6 snaps today. You still have to play Jamar Chase. He's Jamar Chase. He had 9 targets in this game. You had T. Higgins leaving this game with an injury. Higgins will probably miss time. We'll dive into Tyler Boyd in the waiver wire video tomorrow, but what sucks is Boyd may not even be viable here either, just considering the fact how bad this offense is. Now with the Chargers, Joshua Palmer leads the team in receiving. Joshua Palmer leads the team in snaps. He ties with Keenan Allen in routes run. You had Quentin Johnson really only as a factor in 3 wide receiver sets, only running 22 routes. Going forward, I think Quentin Johnson's still the guy with long-term upside. Palmer's definitely the guy that you want in the short term. Coming out of the bye, will be very interesting to see how they split this wide receiver room. Will be very nice to get Eckler back in this offense as well. Justin Herbert dealing with the finger injury. A really great timing that this team has the week 5 bye to get fully healthy. Going over to the Raiders side, Jacoby Myers, not startable with no Jimmy Garoppolo. Everybody already knows that. Looking at Josh Jacobs, our guy. Love to freaking see it. Josh Jacobs, 8 receptions, 81 receiving yards. If we are going to look at the NFL leaders at this moment in receiving at the running back position, You have Josh Jacobs at numero uno. I mean, alongside Christian McCaffrey, alongside Bijan Robinson, alongside phenomenal running backs on this list. Josh Jacobs remains a must-start player every single week. I think if this offense improves, Josh Jacobs can get even better. Obviously, Devontae Adams is great. Nobody needs to say that. We already know what's going on here. And now, New England, there's not a single player startable outside of maybe Hunter Henry. Also, this Dallas Cowboys defense has an argument to be made that it's the best defense in the NFL. What's very interesting, of course, is we had the report going into the game saying, oh, okay, Zeke Elliott's going to see starter reps. Zeke Elliott's going to be blah, blah, blah. I don't know if it's that this game got out of hand. Ramondre Stevenson still did see the majority of work. Now, nobody's interesting. I mean, especially if we expect that this usage changes going forward, you have to go through and drop Ramondre in your rest of season rankings. Now, going over to Arizona, Hollywood Brown does get double-digit targets. Michael Wilson has multiple receiving touchdowns. We will talk about Wilson a little bit more in the waiver wire video tomorrow. Zach Ertz, 10 targets, really encouraging considering the fact that he didn't really get used at all against Dallas last week. And he goes out there, he runs 41 routes, which is only behind Hollywood Brown for the team lead. So really nice usage for Zach Ertz in a full PPR format. James Conner continues to see everything in this backfield. I mean, James Conner has 11 carries in comparison to Mario DiMercato. I believe we said that correctly. If not, I'm an idiot. Please ignore me. With 1. James Conner didn't really get involved as they went up against the 49ers. Can't really take too much away from Arizona here. And then on the 49ers side of things, Christian McCaffrey should have been the number 1 overall pick in fantasy. I was the idiot drafting Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson over Christian McCaffrey. Looking at the running back landscape right now, looking at the volume that you are getting from CMC, it is hard to say that there is anybody more valuable than CMC in fantasy. 8 targets, leads the team. The receiving touchdown, 3 rushing touchdowns, over 100 rushing yards. I understand a lot of people are going to run to Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel played 48 snaps. He had a couple of carries, didn't really get anything in a receiving game. Like maybe this was due to an injury. And then also Brandon Ayuk, goes out there and has himself a day. I think that these 49ers players, at least these pass catchers outside of Christian McCaffrey, are probably going to be very volatile rest of season. But you have to start them no matter what anyway. Okay. But I think that's all I have for you all in this video. Please, if you have not done so already, go down there, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And of course, if you want to check out any of those pick'ems over on Underdog Fantasy, you can find that link in the description, find in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, you're going to get a 100% deposit match up to $500 on Underdog Fantasy. Plus, you're going to be getting our updated rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. And ladies and gentlemen, you'll be getting a Geno Smith special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard against the New York Giants on Monday night. So please make sure you are taking advantage of that. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you. And I really hope I get to see you with the live stream on Monday.